This is not a werewolf story, Chapter 6, where you hear about white deer for the first time. When I wake up, the first thing I think is, what's Vincent's class schedule? And the second is, it's Friday. I hurry to get ready. Maybe Vincent will sit next to me at the counter. But as I'm going into breakfast, Vincent is coming out. He's telling a story to Mean Jack and Jason, and the two dimwits are laughing so hard they can't breathe. So that's that. I know it's dumb, but it feels like someone has taken a rake and dragged it back and forth over my lungs. Vincent is already part of the pack I'm not part of. But Vincent stops when he sees me. "Raoul, my man," he says. He grabs my hand and shakes it. With a flick of his chin, he tells the other two to go on without him. "I was waiting for you. Save me a seat at lunch, okay?" It's crazy how relieved I feel. But I wonder, how long will it last? How long will he be able to be friends with me and with them? A week, I bet. "I can hardly understand what those two are saying," he says. "It's like they speak their own language. Don't throw me to the wolves like that again, all right?" He doesn't even know how funny that last comment was. Fishing Friday. It's my job here. Every Friday after lunch and before parent pickup, I take the cubs fishing at the lake at the edge of White Deer Woods. Today, Dean Swift joins me at the counter for a quick meeting. "No sign of Gollum?" he asks. I shake my head. Dean Swift exhales. His shoulders drop. "Very unfortunate. But we have another small crisis that is slightly more pressing. Remember the bone sparrow found in the blackout tunnel?" he asks. I nod. The bone undoubtedly belonged to a dog. Last night I explored the blackout tunnel myself. It appears that over the winter an animal used it as a den. Dean Swift stares out the window like he's thinking. That new housing development they put near the ferry terminal has been catastrophic for so many of our animal friends. I believe we are dealing with a predator, most probably a coyote, that has been displaced from its territory. He shakes his head sadly. A second later, his spine straightens, his elbows jut out a little, and he begins a lecture. In packs, coyotes have been known to attack humans. However, the animal that has claimed the blackout tunnel appears to be a loner. And if his territory is centered around the blackout tunnel, I doubt you would encounter him so far north as the lake, especially in the middle of the day. I believe that suspending our normal activities would teach a lesson of fear to our young cubs. Fishing Friday is their sacred hour free from adult supervision and in the tutelage of their divine preceptor, Mother Nature. But I'm counting on you to keep your eyes open today. Bobo must go with you, as usual. She will function as an early warning system. Coyotes don't scare me, but I know what he means when he talks about the new housing development. It borders the far side of White Deer Woods, and coyotes aren't the only predators the new human families are making nervous. After breakfast, the cubs all follow me out of the dining hall and line up in front of their equipment room so I can hand out their poles. If the dean only knew how Fishing Friday normally goes down, he wouldn't waste his breath warning me about a coyote. 6 times Jane has hooked me, not a fish. 4 times Tim has eaten deer poop. Now the little turds do like the berries, but after the first 3 times you'd think he'd make a mental note of it. 3 times I lost one of them for more than an hour, and we all had to fan out in a long line and form a search party. Twice little John was sure he saw a witch and got so scared he wet his pants. I keep telling him that, yes, there is magic in those woods, but no witches. Before we leave, I line them up and hand out the equipment. Poles, hooks, and bait. 60 times someone's pole has floated away to the middle of the lake. When it's Sparrow's turn, I hold his brand new pole out to him, and then jerk it back a little as he grabs for it. He laughs. "I won't bust it up, I promise," he says. I hand it to him and squeeze the back of his net lightly. His hair is soft and wispy. He flips the pole over in his hand and then looks up at me with his face really still. I can tell he's too happy for words when he gets that look. He traces a finger along the design I carved. It's of two wolves, and they're running around the bottom, tail to mouth. It's the best carving I've ever done. And he gets what it means. He knows what I'm saying to him. I'm saying, hey, Sparrow, you're no cub. You're no weak runt. You're a wolf. You're in my pack. 5 times Sparrow has slipped his hand in mine while we walk back to school from the lake. You know what Sparrow's problem is? It's so bad it's hard for me to tell it. When he first came here, he always had a couple of bruises on his cheek or his arm. Over the week, they would fade and turn into yellow smears. Then Friday night, he'd go home with his mom. When he came back on Sunday, he'd run to his room, open the door, and chuck in his duffel bag. Then, quick like a bunny, he'd head down to Fort Casey all by himself. But every single time, Sparrow would come back with more bruises. He'd tell the dean that he'd fallen on the stairs at the fort, or that he'd stood up under the cannon and gotten a lump on his head. I had a bad feeling about it. How can one kid get hurt so much and so bad? So one Sunday afternoon, after his mom dropped him off, I decided to find out. First, he ran to his room and put his bag away. He came back out wearing a too big baseball cap, and I followed him over to Fort Casey. You know where he went. To the blackout tunnel. Before he stepped into the tunnel, he looked back, like he wanted to make sure nobody was watching. He lifted his head up, and for the first time, I saw what the baseball hat hid. A huge bruise under his eye. He stayed in the tunnel for a while, and then came out. When he got back to the school, he ran up to the dean and said, "Dean Swift, a little boy playing on the field at the fort hit a baseball right into my eye." Dean Swift clucked a few times, put an arm around him, and took him to the nurse. I was confused. Nothing had hit him at the fort. My gut told me that Sparrow shouldn't go home on the weekends, but I kept my mouth shut because I didn't know who to tell or even really what to say. It was just a feeling, that's all. It turned out Sparrow's mom was hitting him, not because he was bad, but because she was. I heard the dean telling Cook Patsy one day when they forgot I was in the kitchen. I couldn't see his face since I was chopping up onions and had to keep wiping my eyes, but I've never heard his voice so furious. Those were the worst onions I've ever chopped. The dean had found out that Sparrow was lying about getting hurt at the fort because he didn't want to get his mom in trouble. I think he was just sitting in the blackout tunnel feeling sad and trying to imagine accidents that would match the bruises his mom gave him. Now his grandma picks him up for the weekend, and he never has bruises anymore. So I take special care of Sparrow. I should have told the dean what I saw that day at the fort, even though I didn't understand it. It took another month before the dean figured it out. How many more times did Sparrow's mom hit him in that month? Dean Swift says we have to forgive ourselves when we make mistakes. He has a funny reason for it, too. He says if you don't forgive yourself for making a mistake, then you get so that you never want to admit that you made one. I'm still chewing on that one. Today, Vincent is coming fishing with us, even though he's not one of the little kids. It was the dean's idea to give the new kid a chance to have some fun. If he has a great day today, it will make it easier for him to return on Sunday night, he said. Here's the thing about Dean Swift. He lies, sure, but only because sometimes it's easier than explaining everything. He's disorganized, but that's because he's always thinking. Studying the natural light phenomena of the island is a big job. But the main thing is, he's kind, and that's all that matters, isn't it? To us, anyway. To the ones who got left on the edge of an island with nothing but a suitcase full of clothes and a head full of trouble. No kid here is lucky, but we're all lucky to be here. When it's Vincent's turn for equipment, I hold up a fishing pole in one hand and a slingshot in the other. Then I shrug a little so he knows he can choose one or the other. Some kids think fishing's boring, but everyone loves a slingshot. 20 times I've been hit so hard with a rock in the back of the shin or the private parts that I almost fainted. Vincent looks from one to the other. Can I just hang out and watch? He asks. I nod. Vincent's not a little kid, but I've seen lots of little kids act like this. As far as I can tell, it's just that they're afraid of messing up. So when Vincent says he wants to sit and watch us all have fun, I make sure he sees that I'm packing the slingshot, in case, once we're out there in the woods, he changes his mind and decides to try something new. The dean opens the door for us and hands me the walkie-talkie to use in case of emergency. To him, a scraped knee is an emergency. That man has no idea what happens in those woods. We walk single file in the weeds along the roadside. Bobo leads the way. No traffic on this road, since it only leads from Highway 20 to the school. The lake is 10 minutes away, halfway between the highway and the school. While we walk, I think about my problem. The counselor says I have trust issues. He says it's because the people I relied on most, my mom and dad, have not been able to take care of me. He says that's why I don't like to talk very much. Wrong is what I want to say to him, but not enough to say it. The reason I don't talk is because I can tell nobody is really listening. What I have to say doesn't really matter. The things that matter happen in the woods. The things that matter don't need words. Today is Friday, so tonight matters. Once we step off the road and into the woods, we all breathe in deep to smell the street trees and dirt. Bobo runs off on a scent. There's nothing I'd like more than to drop on all fours and follow her. I point up into the fork of an old oak tree. Vincent follows my finger. A bike! How did that get there? It's a rusted red 10-speed. In 5 places, where the branches of the oak have grown around it, the bike has become part of the tree. It'll be there until that oak falls, and by that time, a boy walking by the trunk won't even know the bike is in there. The oak will have swallowed it up like a snake does a mouse. Sparrow answers, Raoul put it there. Vincent laughs like it's the coolest thing ever. My dad gave me that bike. It was way too big for me. He pushed me around on it a lot the Friday afternoon he brought it up here. Put on a good show for the other parents. When he stopped coming, I decided to give the bike to the tree. It's just as likely to learn to ride it as I am. We keep walking. We're at the end of the path. The lake is in front of us. On the other side of the lake, the trees are so close together, and the blackberries scrape and the nettles sting so sharp that nobody has ever gone beyond them. Nobody but me, anyway. What's that? Vincent asks in a whisper. Pinpricks in my fingers and on my head. For a second, I wonder if I'm going to look where he's pointing and see the secret that changed my life. I follow his fingers with my eyes. He's pointing to the straw man that I nailed to a huge cedar last year after Tuffman tackled Sparrow during touch football. We use it for target practice. It's wearing Tuffman's favorite sweatshirt that says 3X Olympian. I stole it from the laundry room. He turned the whole school upside down looking for that shirt. Not one of the Cubs ratted me out, though. Not even when Tuffman leaned in and hit them with his foul breath and a deadly speech about honesty and thieving and the awful punishment you get for stealing a man's clothes. On the head of the straw man, I nailed an old crow's nest that looks like Tuffman's toupee. Cracks me up every time I see it. I pull my sling out of my back pocket. It's a little harder to use than a slingshot, but it's my weapon of choice. I walk over to the straw man and point to the feet, the chest, and the shoulders. 5 points, Sparrow yells out. Then I point to the knees, and Little John shouts, 20 points. A runner's knees are valuable. I can see by Vincent's nod that he gets that. I point to you-know-where on the shorts. 50 points. I have to say it myself because all the kids are laughing to bust a gut. I walk back to Vincent. I reach down and scoop up a smooth stone, the perfect shape. A sling has 2 cords attached to a leather pouch in the middle. I set the stone in the center of the pouch. I hold the ends of the cords with the fingers and thumb of my right hand. I look at Vincent to make sure he's watching. I start to spin it above my head. Vincent's eyes follow it. The cubs whoop as the sling arcs faster and faster. For a minute, I just swing and stare at the straw man, finding my rhythm. I can't help but show off. I close my eyes. I let the end of one cord go. The stone flies out of the pouch and makes a straight line toward the old cedar. Thwack! I hear the kid shout, and I open my eyes. I look at Sparrow. 50 points, he informs me. and reaches out to shake my hand like a gentleman. Vincent shakes his head. The look in his eyes means more than any compliment. I'm about to hand him the sling, but then I think better of it. I want him to do something he can be good at right away. I pull the slingshot out of the knapsack. It's a lot easier to learn how to use than a sling, and it's a lot safer while you learn. You let go of that sling a little too soon and some kid has a rock between the eyes. I hand him the slingshot. I show him how to hold the Y-shaped piece of wood and where to put the rock, but I can tell he already kind of knows. I leave him alone to practice and go help the little kids bait their hooks. Whiz! I hear Vincent's rock sail by the cedar tree. Thump! It falls on something soft like a big mushroom. Whiz! Another one. Whip! A leaf on a branch. Progress. Whiz! Thwack! Now that hit straw. I turn back and give him a thumbs up. He stands taller, throwing back his shoulders like a major league pitcher on the mound. Thwack! 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 The sound follows me all the way to where the little kids are squatting over their books. One problem down, another one pops up. Little John is bawling. Tears are streaking through the dirt on his face and snot is running from each nostril like two yellow slugs. He looks at me and sobs. Whoa, I don't want to kill Mr. Wormy. It's just a worm, Sparrow says to him. He stabs 3 of those little suckers onto his hook. I lead little John by the hand to the edge of the lake. Look, I say. I point to the pollywogs swimming around the shiny, smooth rocks. I scoop up a bunch and let them wriggle in the palm of my hand. Little John bends down to look. He stops crying. He starts petting the pollywogs. Nothing like the life cycle of amphibians to get a boy's mind off his troubles. Before I can stop him, he pops 4 of them into his mouth. He swallows a huge gulp. They're good, he says, rubbing his tummy. Oh, man, I say, I'm gonna zook. Then my scalp tingles. Something in me says to look up. Woods magic. I look up. I look up and see a glowing ball of blue-green fire floating across the lake. Will-o-wisp. I mouth the words, but no sound comes out. I've seen it once before, when I first noticed the woods world, and it takes the breath from my lungs this time too. Will-o'-the-wisp are one of the light phenomena that Dean Swift studies. Ignis fatui, it's called in Latin, and that means foolish fire. People have been seeing it for centuries, but it's still a mystery. Dean Swift says most scientists think it's some kind of chemical reaction caused by a bunch of dead stuff breaking down. He says it with bigger words, but you get it. When I researched it on my own, I found out that a long time ago, people thought will-o'-the-wisps would lead you to treasure or to a secret doorway where you could get in and out of heaven and see people you loved that you'd lost. They were on to something. I watched the ball of light skip above the water. Tonight, I'll go again to the place the will-o'-the-wisp led me a year ago, and I will feel like I am home, and I will find what I have lost. My breath comes calm and slow like it does when I'm deep in the woods with her. Little John looks up, his cheeks bulging and a little trickle of slime in the corner of his mouth. He doesn't see what I see. Then I hear Vincent shouting behind us. You guys won't believe what I just saw. The coyote. I jump up. I can see Sparrow by the lake, but where's Bobo? Everyone runs toward Vincent. As I hurry to catch up, I notice that they've all dropped their poles. 6 poles are floating in the water, heading slowly toward the middle of the lake. I change the count. 66 poles have gone adrift. I'm about to say one of those bad words Jack is always saying when I see a shadow by the big hemlock. It's Sparrow. He's got his new pole in his hand, and he's setting it on a thick bed of pine needles far from the water's edge. He looks up and sees me. I told you I'd take care of it, he calls to me. Then he lopes over, and we head toward the old cedar and the straw man. 6 times he's put his hand in mine. The kids are all gathered around Vincent. I let out a little puff of air when I see Bobo behind him, her ears flat. Her tail is tucked as far up under her body as it can get. It was over there, Vincent says, pointing to the other side of the lake, where White Deer Woods begins. On that side, the water comes right up to blackberry brambles and trees. It takes 4 legs to find the rabbit and deer paths in that tangle of branches, needles, and thorns. What? I asked. What did you see? My heart pounds. Kablam, kablam, kablam. My fingertips tingle. I can feel my ears stretching the way they do when the woods magic happens. Something tells me Vincent's not going to say coyote. I saw a white deer with huge black antlers, Vincent whispers. Did it talk to you? I put my hand over my mouth too late. That was not a question I should have asked. Obviously. Did it talk to me? No, it didn't talk to me. Vincent's voice sounds strange. I clear my throat. I said, did it walk to you? And that, kids, is called taking a play from Dean Swift's book. It looked like it was going to walk across the lake toward me. And nobody else saw it? I asked. No, I heard a noise like a jet engine. They ran over when I shouted. Vincent points to Beth, Maggie, Peter, and Paul. We were all looking at the same spot there, but I was the only one who saw it. It was huge. He hops from foot to foot. The truth hits me. 2 times now, white deer has come to the far edge of the lake. 3 times, and it'll be science, right? Vincent is staring at me. Bobo is staring at me. The cubs are staring at me. Am I changing? I lick my teeth, but they feel the same. I realize that they're probably all just surprised at my talking so much. My grandma's eyes play tricks on her when she's tired, Sparrow says all of a sudden. Everyone looks at him instead. We pack up to leave pretty quick after that. As we step from the path onto the paved road, Vincent grabs my arm. I was lying, he blurts, when I said it didn't talk. I had a feeling, but why? He answers my question before I ask it. I didn't want everyone thinking I'm crazy, but it did. It talked to me. It kept saying the word raven. Am I crazy? He asks. We hear a blaring honk. It's Sparrow's grandma tearing up the road in her huge blue pickup, coming to get him for the weekend. All we can see of her as she rips by us is her curly white hair and the top rims of her enormous glasses. I'm not sure that lady should be driving. Trickster, I say after the dust settles. The raven is a sweet-talking trickster. Vincent looks at me like I'm speaking gibberish. Maybe I am. But all of a sudden my mind fills with black feathers. Remember the murder of crows swarming over Vincent when he made his wild run for freedom? Woods magic. The crows flew to him the way the wolves once ran with me. I step closer to him. I want to ask him if he saw the will-o'-the-wisp too, if its light pulled at him so he had to follow. I want to tell him that it will take him to the lighthouse so deep in the woods only the light knows the way in and out. I'm about to tell him everything about my mom and my dad and the wolves in the woods. Then I stop myself, because I see him shaking his head. A little at first, and then a lot. Nah, he says, licking his lips. That's just crazy. Crazy like talking to your cereal crazy. Crazy like riding your bike on the freeway crazy. I'm just tired, like Sparrow's granny says. He looks confused. But I didn't want to lie to you. My mom says I have to stop lying before I can come back home. We walk the last few yards to the circle driveway, scuffing our shoes in the dirt. I like him for telling me the truth, even if he did lie at first. I like him even more for keeping his promise to Pretty Lady. But I don't think I'll try to explain to him about the magic in the woods and the way it works for me. Because if white deer couldn't get through to him, how could I?